Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and we are at Distributech 2025. We've got interviews with thought leaders, and we'd love for you to see what we've done here. Hey, thanks for joining us. My next guest is Brad Langley. Brad, it's good to meet you.
Likewise.
You're with GridX.
Correct.
What's your title?
CMO, Chief Marketing Officer.
Okay, so marketing, you're going to be able to talk a lot about a lot of different things.
Yes.
First of all, how'd you get in the power industry? Tell me the journey and what were you doing before GridX?
Yeah, happy to. So I've been in this space for about 15 years now.
Okay.
Marketing to utilities. And I got in the space back in the early 2008, 2009. I was working for a PR agency. And this was around the time of the ARRA grants. And so a lot of investment coming in clean tech. I founded a clean technology practice where we work with clean technology companies to get their story out, to get it more public so people could see what they were doing. Ended up going to work with one of my clients, which was called Tendril. They were a home energy management pioneer. So, think technologies to get more real-time data in the house about energy usage and those kinds of things. Ran marketing there for about 6 years, and then Tendril went through a very aggressive roll-up strategy where we acquired about 5 companies in 6 months. Wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that again. It was
a little bit of a culture shock.
A little bit of the culture shock, yeah, absolutely. And we rebranded as a company called Uplight. And today, Uplight's a major leader in customer engagement. So working with utilities to find ways to better engage customers so they can take an active role in managing their energy consumption. From there, I went and spent 2 years at Oracle working with their O-Power business unit. Okay. So everyone knows Oracle, obviously a very big company in this space. O-Power was also customer engagement and solution. And from there, I realized I loved working at Oracle, but I'm more of a smaller company guy, a little bit more autonomy, a little more creativity in the marketing mix. And so I joined GridX when the CEO, who was the COO at Tendril, came and asked me to join in a marketing lead position. And so been there now for just over 3 years.
Excellent. So you know the industry from the problems in the industry. I hypothesize that we have seen more change in the last 5 to 10 years than we've seen in 50 years prior to that. What are those changes and where are we? Where's the industry today as you guys see it?
Yeah, I think the industry is in a really good place. I'll start there. I think it's amazing that utilities are committed to decarbonizing the grid, to getting dirty power out of the system. I think we need that. Environmentally, I know some people don't necessarily believe climate change is real, but I think that we've seen some pretty dramatic shifts, and it's important that utilities do their part in order to remove those dirty emissions from the power system. So that's been, I think, a really great thing to see and a good signal. And as part of that, you're seeing lots of different distributed energy resources on the grid, which definitely creates some grid strain. So electric vehicles, solar, storage. Now you're kind of seeing how all those devices are getting orchestrated through virtual power plants and other kinds of technologies and processes. So I think, it went from very much a one-way power delivery to customers, keep the lights on, which utilities do a fantastic job at, to now having to orchestrate a lot of these different devices so that you don't create additional strain on the grid. We're seeing a lot of that now with electric vehicles and other devices. And so kind of moving more from a one-way delivery of power, billing customers, and now having to orchestrate all these devices that are on it to maximize substations and ensure that the grid doesn't shut down. So, and I think that's only going to increase over the next few years as more people buy vehicles and more electrification of household appliances occurs. And so I think that's been a really significant shift. One more thing I'll say is, along those same lines, I think utilities have really recognized the role of customers in maintaining grid stability, ensuring that customers stay satisfied, that their bills don't skyrocket as a result of a lot of the new energy use devices that are currently on the grid. And so more actively engaging customers, not just as ratepayers, but as active participants in the energy transition. And I think that's been a fundamental shift that I've seen too over the past 5 years.
I heard a good comment. My son lives in California.
As do I.
Yeah, and he is now a prosumer.
Yep.
He creates power. He sells it to Southern Cal Edison.
Yep.
He takes power. He's got his electric car, and he's about to get another one. But the idea that a ratepayer could go from a ratepayer to a consumer.
Yep.
which was a big leap. And now they're prosumers that's kind of unheard of. I want to flip back to your previous career, AMI. There were a lot of people that jumped on it pretty quickly, but I don't know how you couldn't have jumped on it. Talk a little bit about, because Tendril had to have something to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So we would take and ingest the AMI data to do our insights and analysis and such. I actually live in California, and I was there when PG&E implemented AMI, and there was a lot of consternation from customers thinking it was like spying on them, or there were health benefits to, or health ramifications to it. And so I think what that shows is that utilities didn't always do a great job of explaining the benefits of AMI, why this new fancy meter was going in the house. AMI penetration is a very high percent now. I think it's 80% upwards of utilities that have AMI, and now we're seeing a shift to AMI 2.0. I think one thing I would say is, I don't know that utilities have fully maximized the value of that data to do what was intended, which is to optimize the system, to provide insights to customers so they can make intelligent decisions. And so as we shift to AMI 2.0, I think it's important to make sure, we're storing that data. We have a plan for how to maximize it, how to use it, so that we can make sure that we're justifying those investments and making use of the data as, intended. And that's one thing. I know we'll talk about GridX, but ingesting all the AMI data to do some really valuable cost insights so people know exactly how much they're going to pay for their energy usage in this kind of new paradigm of different DERs and such.
And I know I was at a conference recently, and one of the VPs from a Southern company, so it's a Georgia Power, Alabama Power,
they're a customer of ours,
Southern company, and they had been used to about 1 to 1.2% load growth, primarily coming from the Atlanta area. They're now at 8% load growth.
And growing.
And the second largest AI center in America is North Atlanta, the first being Northern Virginia. The whole point about connecting AMI at the consumer level, there's got to be a connection there to say, if you got the kind of load growth, you can't just build more capacity.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think consumers can certainly play a role in reducing that load growth. But at the end of the day, it's the large data centers and the large manufacturing facilities that are driving a lot of that. And so I think it is important that we find strategies and ways to make sure that the residential consumer doesn't necessarily pay for a lot of those investments and energy uses being made. And so I think there are ways to optimize those kinds of systems to charge these large data center operators or large facilities, to shift their energy usage out of the peak. So, because you're right, we can't just add more capacity as a very expensive proposition. So I think there's more cost-effective ways to shift that demand to make sure that, you welcome investments in your area, because I'm sure Georgia wants those large energy use appliances to be built, but just to make sure it doesn't add undue impact to regional customers, because you're seeing lots of rates across the country go up. That continues to do so. I mean, being in California, we see our rates increase quite a bit, and we do try and shift our usage, but it can be difficult to do. So just making sure that everybody, is really playing their role. And AMI, if utilities are giving their AMI to strategic technology providers to find ways to analyze that data to make sure that they're on the right rate, that if they buy an EV, here's what they can save, to make sure they're accompanying that with, a level 2 charger and charging overnight. There are strategies that you can take to use AMI data to optimize a person's energy usage by giving them a level of visibility and insight.
Yeah. In Georgia, we opened another nuclear state.
I read the articles. Plant Vodal.
And that kind of met, but it's already maxed out. We've already maxed out the use there, so I don't know where we're going to get more power. Let's switch gears. So you've seen it. You have a good grasp of the industry. What do you think the next 5 to 10 look like?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think load growth is going to just continue. Obviously the AI revolution is driving a lot of these data centers to be built. I think utilities will continue to find ways to avoid large capital infrastructure projects and look for more innovative use of that data to provide insights to people to make smarter energy decisions. I think that's one thing. I think we're seeing a lot, too, in terms of wildfire prevention. That's obviously a really hot topic. Being in California, we've seen how impactful that can be. So whether undergrounding power lines or putting sensors in areas where you're at higher fire risk. I think the rest of utilities pay a lot more attention, even in areas where maybe wildfires haven't been a major issue. I think I saw, was it the Carolinas? There was a big time. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these huge wildfires in places you wouldn't necessarily expect. So I think we'll see more utilities do some preventative measures to ensure that that kind of tragedy doesn't befall them, or they're doing what they can to prevent those kinds of things in the future. And I think we'll also just see more of a heightened role on end customers in being part of flexing demand. So whether that's business customers or residential customers, we found that by shifting to different rate structures, you can actually have significant load shift and load shed. And so finding more opportunities to have like customers be part of the solution, even as load growth and usage goes up, I think is going to be a really primary focus for utilities going forward.
What does GridX do?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. So GridX is a software company, and we have been around for about 15 years, and we really are about helping utilities transition to complex rates and programs. So when you think about rates like time of use rates that shift what you pay based on the time of day that you use the energy, dynamic pricing, we're seeing a lot of that in California where you're sending real-time signals that change the price of energy, EV rates, and then from a program side, managed charging programs, VPPs. And what GridX does, that AMI data we talked about, we ingest all that AMI and customer data so that we can tell customers exactly what they're going to spend on their energy if they switch to that rate, or if they charge their EV at a certain time of the day. So that's part of what we do, but we also are moving into helping utilities design rate structures. So a lot more utilities are starting to see the value in different rate structures. And right now they use very antiquated tools like spreadsheets to do this. And there might be one person in the rate department that knows how to operate all those pivot tables. And so a more thoughtful and I think efficient way of doing that all the way through the billing of those rates. So right now, if you implement a rate or a program, the customer information system, which is essentially the utility's cash register, doesn't do a great job of billing those rates without a lot of extra investment or customization. And so we can do that much more effectively so that utilities can pilot programs a lot more quickly, a lot more effectively, and not have to wait a year or two to do a managed charging pilot, to do a dynamic pricing pilot, but to do it in much quicker means to see if it works, make enhancements, and then just roll it out to much broader audience.
So is it installed at the utility, or is it separate system that you...
It's a software as a service technology, so it lives in the cloud, so super easy to plug into existing utility infrastructure. And we've seen that trend where utilities are now more comfortable moving kind of off-premise and adopting software as a service, which is fantastic because those on-prem systems can be super expensive. And once they age, they're difficult to really modify and get them up to deal with the various systems and technologies required to really spur this energy transition.
And it seemed to me that your biggest enemy is that guy, the CIO, that says cybersecurity to do something in the cloud. So obviously you all have overcome.
Yeah, we applied all the appropriate security protocols and standards. But yeah, I wouldn't call the CIO the enemy, but a lot of times IT can certainly be an influence in these decisions because they're the ones that I know you were playing with words, but we love all facets of the utility, but that security piece is important. We also run into because utilities have massive amounts of data, it can be difficult to transfer them to a company like ours. And so lots of conversations with IT and systems on our side to make that as seamless as possible because we'll get those 15-minute interval reads. We will adjust that data every single day to do the magic that we do. So it's important that IT feel comfortable with our ability to process that and keep it secure and then be effective with it.
I know CIOs are not the enemy, but they are certainly a roadblock. And if you can get through that roadblock, it creates a partnership because the utilities are not going to get to that next level until they figure out how to ingest all of these new, there's so many new things on market. I hear people saying, hey, they talk different languages. Somebody has to speak the common language.
That's exactly right.
Sounds like you all speak a common language.
I think we do, especially as it pertains to customer data and AMI data and rates and programs. We're experts in that space, and I think we're really good at what we do.
Good. Awesome. Represent them well. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate the time.